Good morning. I'm excited to be able to talk to you about our putting the armor of God on, as we've been doing for weeks. Now, I want to talk to you about the most important piece of armor that you'll ever put on. Now, you say, well, I thought they're all important. Well, they are. But he didn't tell us here in Ephesians chapter 6. He says to us in verse 16, above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith we will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one. Now, the Bible's already told us that the devil seeks like a devouring lion, a roaring lion, whom he may devour. That means he's after us. But if you study a tiger or a lion, what they do is they stalk their prey. They watch them day and night. And then they find the most vulnerable position that they can get them in. And many times they'll premeditatedly get ahead based on past watching where they're going, and they'll leap from a cliff and they'll break their neck. That's what they do. Now, what does that say to us? The devil's watching us. And these spiritual forces, these spirits of the enemy that watch to seek to persuade us to take on their attitudes are very, very cunning. And he says, if you want to be able to stand against them, you need the shield of faith. That was about a 4-foot tall, 2-foot wide shield. And that shield was able to protect the entire body. The helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the belt of truth, feet shod with the preparation of the gospel. He guarded everything. So every piece of armor is guarded by faith. Putting that on by faith. Now, how do we get this on? And what does he mean to quench the fiery darts of the wicked one? Okay, let's say the doctor calls. You've just had some tests. He doesn't give you the report over the phone. He says, you need to come in. We need to talk to you about these test results. Now, what happens to your heart? Immediately, it goes into fear mode. Must be bad. Must be cancer. Must be something else. I'm terrified until that moment. Or do we say, God is already there. He's got this. And I'm not going to slip into this vulnerability of fear and let those attitudes of stress work in my system that accomplish nothing. Okay, it goes back to kids, all the way back. I mean, one gets picked, the other doesn't get picked for, I was terrible. Kickball or whatever, want him. Oh my goodness, who's going to take him? And if you're not careful, a kid will get an attitude of an insecurity, inferiority complex, that I'm not as good as the rest of them. And then something will happen, maybe you're dating or something, and the boyfriend or girlfriend says, I just want to break up. And I can go through, your boss calls you in and says, we just don't have the business we did. We're going to have to lay some folks off. What happens to you? Immediately, we forget everything we know and we go into this, what am I going to do mode? What am I going to do? How am I going to respond? How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to take care of this? And how am I going to sustain this? And we automatically go into this fear mode. But we don't have to. That's where the shield of faith comes in. That's an act of grace. All of these are grace pieces of arsenal. But when we put on this in faith, it holds us. It sustains us. And so before it ever happens, now, that shield was made of wood, covered in leather, and it would be doused in water to be able to put out the fiery darts. Now, somebody says something that hurts you. You're not this, you're not good enough for this or whatever. Something that gets to the quick. Because the devil's been watching you a long time. He knows where to get you. And so all of a sudden you start thinking, that's a childhood scar that you've just opened back up. And so many times something will happen, somebody will say something, and I'll think to myself, I didn't used to, but I do now. Only the devil knew that. And he's been watching, and he put that in you, just like he did Peter that day. You say, well, this only happens with unbelievers. No, it doesn't. Peter was a believer. And Jesus said to him, get behind me, Satan. When he started saying, you're not going to the cross, you're not going to do that. Seeking to make Jesus afraid, seeking to divert him from his purpose. So even the Son of God knows what it's like to be faced with potential fear. But Romans 8:28 works all day long, doesn't it? We know that all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And we know, based on the promises of God, lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the world. Even when the bad diagnosis comes, even when the friend rejects you, even when the husband or wife says, I want a divorce. God's already there, and he's got it. So what do? We say, God, you got this. Your promises and your word are good because you're good for it. The character of Christ is such. If somebody makes a promise, well, that promise is no good. That guy lies all the time. But when Jesus makes a promise, he's never lied. It's impossible for him to lie. And you say, wow, he made that promise to me, and he'll keep it. I will not forsake thee in the midst of this. Now, Peter, we got out of the boat to walk on the water. Jesus already said, come. And then he started to sink when he looked at the winds, looked at the waves. Took his eyes off Jesus, didn't he? And where the eyes go, you go. He started going down because he started thinking, I've been keeping myself up, and this wind and this wave is going to make it very difficult. He didn't realize it was God that was keeping him up the whole time. But in his unbelief, he started trying to go back to self-energy. You need to just go into a mode that says, God, this is too much for me apart from you. But you've already been here, you've handled it, and you've got it. And I'm going to trust you for no matter what comes today. And I'm going to trust you that even bad things will be used for my good and your glory. There is nothing that could come my way that you've not already seen, you've not already allowed, and can be used for your glory. And you've got me. Because God, you've promised to take care of me. And so therefore, I don't have to fear. Put on and lift up the shield of faith. God bless you. You have a great day.